world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire wrong. So then I'm doing IT, and when I go to plug the servers in, they become sentient, and they won't let us access our network unless we forward their chain emails and memes to more and more and more people, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant finds and invites best fit candidates to apply, so you can discover talent you may have missed. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Good morning, Crust. It's a great day to be a bread brother.
Ugh, mornings are not my jam. Or jelly.
Oh, come on. Stop loafing around.
I just woke up feeling hollow inside.
Psst, just grab one of the new Morning Uncrustables sandwiches, like Bright-Eyed Berry or Up an Apple, filled with 12 grams of protein and tons of deliciousness. Crust, what are you eating?
It's just granola, not even yogurt.
No crust, no fuss. Uncrust your mornings.
Welcome to No Question About That. I'm Ed with Dharnish today. How's it going, Dharnish?
Good. A match happened, and then they put all this stuff out on Monday, Tuesday, and now we've got lots of other stuff to address.
What a busy couple of days. Yeah. Okay. So today's topic, we're going to talk about Sir Jim's various interviews. So he did the overlap with Gary Neville. He did BBC with Dan Roan. He did the interview with the Times and the Telegraph and Express. I think he might have done a pool spray with all the print media there.
One after the other, right?
One after the other. He basically said the same thing in all of them, including a whole bunch of canned lines. So, and to go through the main points, which were, I mean, I guess the most interesting one or the most contentious one was with Neville, because Neville actually pushed him a little bit in a way that perhaps Dan Roan didn't quite, although he was, I don't know what you thought. I thought Dan Roan was much more respectful and Neville was kind of a bit hectoring and jumped in on him all the time and kind of interrupted him quite a bit. But we'll go through some of the main points.
That's probably because it's a Neville and he kind of can do that and he's like the club legend. And
yeah,
if sort of Dan Roan was doing that, I'm sure you would have maybe got up and walked out. But it's very interesting that like we had a game, no one's talking about the game now, and we're just talking about this interview that has come out. Clearly, you know, his purpose is clearly his PR. It feels like,
of course, yeah.
It feels like, you know, when a movie star goes to promote a movie, and then you just see them in the media the whole time, and they're saying different things, or they're mainly saying the same things. That's what it feels like a lot. And then obviously we have this.
Well, it was exactly that.
We obviously have this press release as well of the new stadium today, but we'll talk about the interviews. Firstly, like regardless of what you think of the interview, I think it's huge and it's remarkable that a big owner of a club like Man United has done this. Like, absolutely. This is not Florentino Perez did it after the European Super League, but I think that was more of an interview to say, you need the Super League. I'm Daddy Perez. I can do what I want. You need the Super League. Honestly, it's remarkable that an owner has done this. They're seen as like these people who run football clubs as businesses first. And they do. Yeah. They run, because newsflash to people out there, these clubs are businesses first now. They're not football teams. If they were, things would be a lot more different. But there's too much money in the game involved now. I think it's remarkable that he's done it. I think regardless of what he said in the interviews, it's kind of a win, maybe in my book already, because we didn't get so much of a fact statement from the people who were in charge before.
Yeah, well, absolutely. The Glazers have done one interview in 20 years and turned up for one fans forum. So props to Sir Jim for doing this. He was already more communicative a year ago. He did a round of media interviews then, including with Dan Roan at the BBC and a few others, Bloomberg and so on, in which he gave some details. And he's been a little bit more silent since. The occasional piece has come out. Funny, I did the extra show with Wayne before all these media interviews dropped, they were clearly behind an embargo after he'd done them all on Sunday, Monday. And I was complaining about how we haven't heard from Barada or Ratcliffe at all. And there's all these cuts going ahead, and he needs to come out and explain the strategy. And it's kind of, he's one of the reasons that fans were filling the gap by calling him Ratcliffe, capital R, capital A, capital T, or Glazer 2.0, and all this kind of stuff, was that he wasn't communicating, right? And so he's come out and done this, and it's admirable that, I mean, it shouldn't be admirable. It should just be part of, like, as much as they are businesses, they're also social institutions, right? And it's a shame when owners don't treat them like that. Ratcliffe, the positive stuff first, right? He's come out, he's talked to the media, he's clearly passionate and cares about it. He's put his own money on the table, $1.3 billion so far, £300 million or £250 million in cash he's put into the club in the past 12 months, just cash, and it's all gone, basically. And so he clearly cares. He's excited about the future. He's passionate about it. He's not in touch with the common man because he's been a billionaire for too long. Well, you know, he doesn't live on the council estate in Failsworth anymore, so you can't really expect it. But so there's, like, that's good, right? That's the good stuff. And he's actually communicating.
The one thing I don't like is, I put 300 million in, it's gone. Look, we've seen your net worth. All right, that's pocket change to you. That's like, not. It is, yeah. Obviously, he's probably got there because he counted his pennies and he knows his pounds and he knows a lot more about finances than we do. But it's like us investing. I do the stocks, right? The stock market has crashed today or this week. I've lost, I don't know, I'm not going to say on the podcast, but I'm good for it. It's not.
Thank you, Donald.
It's not. Yeah, thank you, Donald. I'm good for it. It's not, so stop banging on about like 300 million is not, 300 million to you is him saying it's gone.
I mean, depending on how you calculate it, because it's quite hard, actually, because Ineos are mostly a private company. So you'll see wild ranges in his net worth, but I think the most common one is around 14, 15 billion pounds range. Ineos are going through a little bit of a tough time on transitions, because obviously, as Ratcliffe has complained about, the European economy is moving away from fossil fuels. It's very much a petrochemicals company. So, yeah, we'll see in the future. But that is a company that does 60 billion euros worth of sales per year. Sir Jim is not struggling for money, and if he ever wants to exit his position, he certainly can, right? So he's good for it.
He's using that as a mechanism to say, look how good of an owner I am and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I want to get into like sort of the rest of what he said, because it felt like there was a theme. I think it's really early. I'm paraphrasing there. I think what really stuck out to me, interestingly, was like, and he kept alluding to it, and he kept saying it as like a theme. He was like, Gary Neville was like, well, this and this happened, and don't you think this is an error, and don't you think that was a problem? And he said, yeah, but we've barely been in there for a long time. Like, he kept saying this throughout the podcast. He's like, Omar Barada was only there for 3 weeks. Jason Wilcox was only there for 3 days. But at the same time, that's not an excuse for how bad of a decision you've been. That's Gary Neville bringing the problem to you and saying, why do these exist? And him saying, oh, I'm new in the job. But it's a very serious thing to take on new ownership of a club, new sporting directors of a club, new execs and all this. But it's well and good saying that you're new without sort of the implications of that. So he's probably, this season is gone. This season is gone, but I think he is alluding to the fact that he was seeing this as a trial period, and we're all just going to have to come along with him and suffer with this trial period of a season. He, I think throughout the interview sort of just said, yeah, I'm new at this. But the ripple effects and causes of what a football club does always trickles down. We're the ones who have to suffer every week. We're the ones who have to watch every week. Sure. We're the ones who have to sort of put our money and time into this every week. He's obviously a big picture guy. He's obviously makes big decisions and then it trickles down. So he sees it as that. And in 5 years, if we talk and the club is better, maybe none of this matters. But it's quite clear and salient to me that everybody was so new in this. It makes sense as to why they got the decisions wrong.
got some things wrong. Yeah. And he's kind of fronted up about that and said, hey, we made some mistakes.
At the very least, I'll give him that.
I don't think it's a very high bar. Honestly, I think that's good leadership personally. So other people have different opinions on that. Fine. But yes, you made mistakes. You have to front up and try not to make the same mistake twice. Unfortunately, they did make the same mistake twice because they fucked up with Ten Hag and they fucked up with Ashworth for different reasons. But still, okay, those are the big ones. He talked a lot about the cuts, or Neville pushed him on the cut. So did Roan. Actually, they were both trying to push him.
He said basically, I'm not aligned into that detail. Neville basically asked him. He said the players' associations, the ones who not the former players, not Keanes, Robsons, basically players who have income from other sources, from media.
Yeah.
He said players from the 60s, the 50s, and the 70s, they get 40 grand a year or whatever it is for the players' association. Basically, former players get paid by the club. That is now gone. Neville then came up with an idea and said, why didn't you put Maguire and Bruno Fernandes in a dinner to raise money? And you could have took care of that. Ratcliffe said, I wasn't aware of that. He said, I'm not into that detail. He's the head honcho, and everything below it, he doesn't see that. And Neville said that alarms him. And it alarms us because we get aware of these little details because the press picks up on it. He just sees these big decisions as, okay, we're going to do this and it's going to cut money here. And in 5 years, it'll go towards this.
I wouldn't expect him to be on a decision that is about £40,000 in a £700 million company necessarily, given that he's got a €60 billion a year company to run as well. So that's fine. I think his team have done him a dirty by not prepping him properly there. So he should anticipate, given that he's done so many interviews, that someone would pick up on a small detail and use that as a way of extrapolating from the small detail and talking about the bigger picture, right? So Neville did it with the former Players Association. He didn't really talk about the cuts in catering staff or the stewards or whatever, like, because there's 400 people who have lost their job. That's not the only cut for the former Players Association, but he used that as a kind of way of getting in there. And it's true that most CEOs of large corporations, I've worked with a lot over the years, would not necessarily be on every single detail. And he's hired a CEO in Barada to kind of lead that. And it had a COO effectively in Ashworth to be on the football side of things. And they didn't get on chemistry or whatever. So I wasn't that surprised. I just thought he should have a better answer. The other thing he should have a better answer on, which he does not have, there's 2 points, and I'll get your reaction on these. One is his basic position is there's jam tomorrow, right? As in, we will be the most profitable football club in the world in 3 or 5 years' time. We need to make these cuts in order to get there, right? That is not a good answer for someone who's paid 30 grand a year as a front of house staff at Manchester United and is now out of a job, right? It's just not a good answer. So, in 5 years' time we'll be good. Jam tomorrow. I hate that kind of thing. It's just not respectful of those people. So that was not good. And then the second thing I thought was not great about it is when he's pushed on his relationship with the Glazers and why we're in the position, he's like, oh, I'm just thinking about the future, right? And there's a lot of talk on social media about the non-disparagement clause in the contract. The sales document has this it's very common. It's just normal. It's nothing special. I've signed contracts with that in as well. And the bar for that is not, I'm going to be critical of it and therefore we get sued. It's one, what's your business relationship with these people? And two, is anything you say truthful? And the relationship he claims is really strong. I think they could cope with him going, yeah, mistakes were made over the last 20 years. Like, they could get, if they're that thin-skinned that they can't cope with that, it's not a good business relationship. And then the second point is, it's just truthful to say the reason why Manchester United are in trouble is for two reasons. One, there's £700 million worth of debt. And two, we've mismanaged the finances of the club, which he kind of got to in throwing Ed Woodward under the bus.
He did say that there was a problem with the structure before.
He did. But in a very kind of lightweight, I'm not going to mention anyone. He said mistakes have been made.
Perhaps he can't, though. Perhaps he can't.
He can. And that's the thing I'm pushing back on, right? So he absolutely He absolutely can, as long as he's not, one, breaking his personal relationship with the Glazers, right? And two, lying and saying disparaging, right? And there's quite a good legal test around what you can do about that. He can't damage the company by saying stuff that's not true. What I took offense to was when he said, oh, they live in Florida. And he says this in a Neville interview. He says they live in Florida. They're not over every detail, where we know through reporting that is actually not true. So yes, they live in Florida or Washington, D.C. in the case of Joel. Avram's in Florida. We know that Joel Glazer was on things as small as, can you buy new equipment for the gym? Can you refit the pool, as Ronaldo once did? These are not big expenditures, and they were on small stuff like that. So they were on the details. And Ratcliffe basically was a shield for them there by going, oh, that's all in the past. We're not going to talk about it. I just want to focus on the future. But I think fans deserve to know that, like, you, Ratcliffe, accept you're now part of this business, and mistakes, big financial mistakes were made in the past, and we're now fixing those. And I don't think that's disparagement.
I think it's interesting that you bring these things up. I'm wondering whether he didn't say anything about the Glazers because he wants to keep them sweet, because he's gonna have to negotiate. He's gonna have to negotiate in future if he wants more of the club.
Yeah, I know exactly. That's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah. So in that sense, that's why he's done that. But overall, to me, it feels like he does care. I'm not gonna portray him in the most positive light. I'm just gonna say, as it is, I feel he does care. He has put money in the club. He's doing that whole PR thing that billionaires do, where it's like pointing at the bad stuff that happened, or pointing out, yeah, but why don't you look over there? And he's pointing at that to not. I don't think he's pointing at that to give a reasonable explanation of why the club are where they are. He's just doing that to detract attention, and for us to go, well, maybe that is a good point. He's also, I think, keeping the Glazers sweet because he wants more stake in the club later.
Yes, but he's negotiated a buyout and terms, basically. I mean, the floor is there. I mean, it's not agreed. They still have to decide to sell.
Sure, but if you have to deal with these people in the future again, there's already probably like a lot of reasonable information to assume that the Glazers don't like the scrutiny. Otherwise, kind of why would they have ever sold?
I understand this argument, right? Keep them sweet. Don't, quote unquote, 1,000 Twitter followers. Don't slag them off. That's not the point. What I'm saying is he's gaslighting fans by pretending that just somehow miraculously we went from being amazingly successful to running out of cash, as he said, by December. And there was nothing in between.
That part I don't agree with at all. That's this whole.
We're not stupid, right?
That's this whole PR thing of like, I put 300 million in. This club was on the. By the way, I'll ask you, because you're more inclined to this. The club, would it have had gone to shit in Christmas if he did? You can't. It's not. This is a football club that brings it. So, like all the football clubs in the world, and we're not gaslighting when we say this because we're fans of the club and we follow it. This club brings in the second or third amount most of money in the world.
So let's make this really clear for people. So United have like top line revenue, they're guiding 670 million or whatever. It's been quite flat, small growth over time. They have a problem with top line revenue, mainly because of broadcast and sponsorship. Match day's fairly flat because they didn't increase ticket prices for a long time. They will now, and they did a little bit last year. So top line revenue, bit of a problem. They've been spending on the company credit card. They have a line of credit, £150 million line of credit with, 300, it can go at 300 million line of credit with the Bank of America. It's got quite a high ticket, a high interest rate on it. And then they've got 2 long-term bonds, which mature in the next couple of years. They're on a low interest rate, and they will have to be refinanced at some point in the next 2 years. The problem is that line of credit that they've been using to buy players. And as a result of they spend on the credit card and then they pay it off. And they've gone through this pattern over the last few years. During COVID, they spent more than they should have, given the lost revenues, and then they spent again to support Eric Ten Hag. That's the big problem. So they've been running out of cash. They would not have gone bust. And that was a headline in the Telegraph or the Times.
He made it sound like that was the case, though, I feel, as well.
They're not going bust. They've got a triple B credit rating, so it's not the best credit rating in the world, but they can most certainly borrow more money. Their EBITDA to debt ratio is about 3.7. So that is the multiple of their free cash flow. EBITDA is a proxy for free cash flow, the amount of cash you produce before you amortize and pay debts. It's about 3.7. That is not particularly high in corporate terms. I mean, it'd be nice for it to be 0, of course. Basically, could borrow more money. We weren't about to go bust. We were running out of cash, and that's his point.
That happens to most clubs are in debt. Tottenham is still in debt for this. I think they might have recently paid it off. I don't know. Most clubs are in debt.
No, they've got about £600 million of debt on a long-term bond to pay for Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Arsenal were in debt for many years. It's pretty normal. Basically, he's using that. Again, he's used certain things where you called it gaslighting. He's using certain things where it's like pointing out how bad United is and saying that he is trying to fix all of that. Basically, he does care, and he's in a position where he's put money into the club, but has come into a predicament that was a broken club already, and he's trying to fix it. But in the process of him doing that, he's pointing out all the bad things without pointing the blame towards himself, which I get because it's a broken club, right? He inherited a broken club, but you knew all of this. You're a billionaire. You make investments. You cannot tell me that you don't have army of people there.
Oh no, he was not surprised by any of it. Yeah,
I picture Succession, him at this big table, and he has a bunch of advisors telling him every detail of the investment that he's about to make. Not every nailed in detail like the one that Gary Neville has told him, but he's in the know. So at some point he's trying to deflect the blame and do all this PR, but he knows the job at hand, and I think he's trying to portray the job at hand to us as like the worst thing ever, which it is, but he knows all of this anyway. I think one of the key points for me as well is I think it's pretty. Neville did a good job of this, by the way. Like recently, his footy coverage, especially his commentary, it feels like he's kind of tired of doing it. But I think he scored a home run in this. It's probably because he's very still invested in the club that he played in since he was little. But the details part, that he isn't aware of it, and like you said, he hasn't been prepped by the team. But that's going to continue happening, and people are going to continue to be affected by that. I'm deadly serious when I say this. I'd employ Gary Neville if I was him.
Well, he's on the regeneration task force, so he's sort of,
He's on the regeneration task force team, but he's ran a club. He's ran several businesses. He has money. He clearly cares about Man United. That'd be a win with the fans, by the way, as well. A legend of the club as a club director. When have fans ever been upset by that?
Well, sure, he can't do it because he's an owner at Salford, and to that too. But I don't know, bring him on as an advisor because those are the details that he would know about. Anyway, what do you think about those little details? Because we're going to keep hearing more of that. I mean, look, I think they have, the big picture, and I'll get to the details, the big picture is there's this financial year about £120 million of savings. All the redundancies have saved about 50 million. And then they have some contracts that ran down and they are going to move some players on, right? So he mentioned this 120 odd million. That's what he's thinking about the big picture. The little details, they do matter. So cutting the stewards bonus, ending the payment to the former Players Association, considering, but I don't think they did it, ending the payment to the Disabled Supporters Association, putting the ticket prices up, putting the prices up for parking, right? All of these kind of things, they feel very, very marginal compared to the £700 million of revenue each year. Ending Sir Alex Ferguson's ambassadorial thing. There was a nice little detail around that where he said, hey, he went to Fergie and said, yeah, it's up to you, but we're losing money. we need to save money. And Fergie came back. This is Ratcliffe's story. Fergie came back and said, okay, I'm stepping it down. We'll see. Well, who knows whether that's exactly true and it played out like that. But so the details do matter. I mean, and there are plenty of negative stories in there or negative things in there. I'm so little concerned about the Fergie thing because Fergie's a multimillionaire many times over. His net worth is tens of millions of pounds. He's 81. No. He doesn't need the money. He's doing just fine. It's all right. He's still a Manchester United legend. Nothing is going to change that ever. I'm less worried about that than I am about the person who is paid 30 grand a year to work in the front of office or in the marketing team, doesn't have a job and maybe struggling to make ends meet. I'm very worried about that. And I think it's just a little bit disrespectful to keep using this word bloated, because I see it as someone who's a strategy person for a very, very long time. Bloat is relative to the things you produce, right? And Manchester United is a much bigger club than Arsenal or City or even Liverpool, right? And they had a few more staff than Arsenal, but they have a much bigger commercial team. And they're a listed company, so they have more analysts. They have more people they employ to do finances. They had more people in marketing and media production. They had more people on the commercial side, where they had a whole office in London to do the commercial contracts and the regional sponsorships and stuff like that. So I kind of understand why there are a lot of more people than were employed at Arsenal. And the question is, were they doing things that were important to the operations of the club? And will we feel it down the line? Because you can just be Elon Musk and go, we're just going to cut all this stuff. It was a waste of time. And actually you feel the pain later, right? Because the club cannot do the things they did. They don't get that contract with, I don't know, the Australian Tourist Board, or I'm just making one up here, or whatever the next commercial contract is, because they don't have the resources to do it. Or, as I've heard from people, they only have one film crew, so they can't film at Old Trafford and at Carrington at the same time. Or people have to wait in the queues at Old Trafford for longer because they're now using agency staff on the gates rather than permanent security staff, right? And there's all these things. Is the fan experience worse? Is the operations of the club worse? Were these people seriously not doing anything that contributed to the running of this club? Or will we feel the pain of that later? So I'm more concerned about that than the ambassadorial contracts or whatever, right?
But I feel as though it's salient that those details are kind of lost on them. They just see these decisions as, like you said, getting rid of the bloat, and all of it is inclusive in getting rid of the bloat, except it affects people's lives, it affects people's livelihoods. Yeah. It affects the way we see the club as well. There's a lot of people I know now who are like, I don't really recognize this club anymore because, yes, it's a business. But like you said, it's an institution as well. But they're running it as a business, first and foremost. And that's going to continue. But look, some of the decisions I agree with, the ambassadorial stuff or paying former players to watch games. But the other stuff, like the players' associations, like staff losing their jobs, like stewards losing a weekly reward, I'm not really sure what that is going to do apart from piss people off.
Yeah, and it just feels so incremental and so pointless compared to and like Neville did a good job of putting this to him. You're making all these cuts, and hang on a minute, you spent £20 million hiring and firing absolutely. Eric Ten Hag and all his coaches and Dan Ashworth, and and Ratcliffe's answer was reasonable, right? In that he's like, well, it's the operations of the business that we had to reset, or we had to get to a different point. And that £50 million saving will be ongoing, right? That's per year. They're trying to get the overall cost.
What did he say? What did he say the exact saving was for the redundancies?
He's not said it, but they put out a notice that the first round, they were guiding 45 to 50 million in savings with about a £10 million cost, redundancy costs and so on. And then they did a second round, so there'll be additional savings on that. He mentioned 120 something a year, but I think that included contracts that ran down last summer. So, for example, David De Gea and Varane,
That's a huge cost.
And some other things. And so Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford, obviously, they're making some savings there because they're partially being paid for by other clubs. But it's funny. And before we go, it's interesting to mention, he kept saying this. He muddled his words up a little bit because he was like, we're still paying for these people.
Yes,
what he was talking about was the amortization on contracts of players that were currently being paid for us. So we're still paying amortization on Sancho, not on Rashford.
Onana, Casemiro, Sancho.
Yeah, well, particularly players that don't actually play for the club. So Sancho and Antony play for different clubs, and we have an amortization cost each year. So it's a cost to Manchester United, even though they're playing for a different club. That partial payment in wages is one thing, but the amortization fee is still on us. Rashford's different in that he's zero book value because he's an academy player. So, and they're paying most of his wages. So it's a savings and there's no amortization costs. He got a little bit muddled up in the way he explained it, I think. But, and the other thing he said, which was, he straddled the line of being disrespectful for current players when he was like, yeah, some of them, Dan Roan, or was it Sam Wallace in the Telegraph? I forget which one now, said to him, he mentioned a bunch of names. Dan Roan did this. He mentioned a bunch of names. And then Ratcliffe gave a general answer, but it was a general answer to specific player names. I don't think he was actually talking about Casemiro when he said, yes, some players are paid too much. But he's clearly thinking it because Casemiro is not a regular first-team starter and he's probably the top wage earner at the club. In fact, I think by my calculations, of the top 10 wage earners at the club, only 3 are regular starters. And that's Bruno, Maguire and De Ligt. And the rest of them are in and out of the team or not in the team or not playing for the club at all. And that's a disaster, right? That you cannot sustain that. You just cannot. And that's part of the thing. He's correct in saying we do have to fix that. And we'll see this
At the very least, that is being fixed, yeah.
Sell Rashford, sell Antony and sell Casemiro and Eriksen will go off on a free. And that will substantially adjust the wage budget, assuming that any players that come in are younger players in the Dorgu mold where you pay 30 million for them and they're on sub 100,000 a week wages, right? And that will be a big structural adjustment for sure. Anyway, we should leave it here because it's a daily pod.
There's lots to unpack with this. There's so much to unpack. So it was good to talk about it at least.
He hinted at the stadium announcement. I think we all thought it was coming on Tuesday, which it did do. I'll do a separate pod on that one, talking through the big tent,
big
Ratcliffe shaft, whatever you want to call it. Big sexy tent with all these big spires. Yeah, it's in a bold design.
I can't lie, I like it.
You can't please everyone. Some people are going to hate it. Some people are going to like it. The 58 group came out and said it's just another corporate thing. And I was like, that's not the take I'd have on that one.
These things get announced and there's like big hype. This is going to take years. Okay? This is going to take years.
5, and that sounds very bold to me to do planning and build. Yeah.
It'll probably be 8, 9. So don't worry about it right now. Okay? You got 8, 9 left of this stadium, yeah.
We'll leave it there. Dharnish, thank you very much. Your debut on the Non-Tactics pod.
Lovely, yeah. Can't wait for people to abuse me.
Everyone in the comments, give him a rating. How did he do?
Oh, God, really?
No, I'm kidding. That was a joke. Don't rate him.
You can if you will, but I'm on the edge just to get some sympathy. I haven't eaten in 24 hours. I'm doing Ramadan.
Much like Nusam Masraoui, we're going to have a break so you can go get some food.
Thank you.
Happy Ramadan Mubarak, and go and have some food in an hour or 2 you're allowed to eat.
Thank you so much. Yeah, unlike some of the staff at the United canteen.
All right, we'll see you. Thanks everyone. Bye now.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.